Let's get started with the Blender interface lesson. So this is for 421 LTS, but it will update in the future regarding the interface, but if the difference is not very significant, we will keep using this one for future lessons. So if you're watching this and we are way beyond 421, that means it's still significant, and anything that is a major change from this version going forward will have an addendum. All right, so let's take a look at Blender 3D for those who are coming from other programs such as Maya, 3ds Max, Lightwave, Cinema 4D, and you just want to see how's the interface for Blender. This is the video for it. Okay, so Blender is a kind of like a super program in a way that it has modeling, animation, sculpting, texture painting, video editing, post-processing, like After Effects. It even used to have a video game engine that they took out because it's not very popular. And yeah, and 2D animation. So it has a hand-drawn frame-by-frame animation as well. So the interface, however, when you first start it, this is what you get. You get a cube, a camera, and one point light as a default. Okay, this, what you're seeing here, this information that you're seeing here at the bottom right here, this is an add-on that I enabled so that you could see the mouse click that I'm using and the keyboard shortcut that I'm using. So it's a screencast. So don't expect to see this as a default feature. This is just something I use for teaching. All right, so when you start, you get a cube whether you like it or not. The world also is rotated and not to the front. So you can see this is a cube. This is the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis, which is not enabled, but we can enable that. So you see it. That's the blue one right there. Okay, and this is the starting file for Blender. You can get rid of the cube if you want to at the beginning by making a new startup, but let's not complicate things. Okay, so let's get started here. I'm going to be using my grease pencil here to kind of point out the main areas and what they are. Okay, so this gigantic rectangular screen that you see here. Okay, oops. Don't want to grab that. Kind of like this one and going out. Okay, all the way here. This is your viewport, right? So this 3D space, we can call it 3D space here to kind of simplify. Okay, we can call it 3D space. Okay, it's also a viewport. So this is where you play around in 3D space, and you can change your viewport, of course. Okay, so this is the viewport right here, and at the bottom right here, okay, let's kind of just go where viewport is. You can see here I'm moving Blender. You can customize it however you want, and you can change the size of each window. So I just move my mouse cursor in there. As you can see, it changed to this up and down arrow so that I can move it. So this is the timeline. Okay, so down here, this entire kind of section right here, this one where you can change your frame position. Okay, this is the timeline. Oh, my mistake. I need to go back to frame 1 because this is all animated. It's an animation. So timeline right here. Oh. Okay, and below the timeline you will see change frame, pan view, dope sheet right here. This is the status bar. Okay, the status bar is basically an info box for gives you hint at what's happening on screen or what kind of tool, how to use the tools using the 3-button mouse. So if I go back to my select tool right here, select the cube. Okay, look at the status bar right here. It's changing depending on where my cursor is positioned at. Okay, even if I go to, let's say, an edit mode right here, and I'm going to try to use a tool like loop cut. Okay, as you can see, the status bar changes to, if I left click, I'm confirming it. I can cancel it. Okay, I can do all sorts of stuff to this one. Okay, so that's basically tells you what context of the tool you're currently using. So I'm gonna do a really awkward arrow right here. Oops, sorry, I need to go to my grease pencil. That points all the way to that bottom, so we call that the status bar. Okay, all right, so this section right here, this is your toolbar. And your toolbar changes depending on context again, like object-oriented programming, right? So if I go back to my select tool, select this one, I'm in object mode right now. If I change to edit mode, your toolbar would expand to accommodate what you need for that one. So let's say we're sculpting. It even changes. So, all right. So object mode, toolbar. One that's not here right now is the sidebar. Keyboard shortcut for the sidebar is N, as in numbers. So I can toggle that on and off. Okay. And you'll have different information here. So it says add-ons, like my screencast right here. You're not going to see this on your screen. So this is because I added it. So this is the sidebar. So let's add that to our annotations right here. So this particular area right here is your well, no, let me not make it too long because we do want to access this. So this is your sidebar. Okay, and then I'm going to put in parentheses right here the keyboard shortcut, and then here T for toolbar. Okay, all right, so this area right here, I'm going to use my mouse to kind of point out the area. So this is your outline or your collection. So collection or outline, this is basically your grouping of objects. You can put them in collection. It's also a filter where, as you can see here, we can see the cube. I can turn off the visibility so you won't see it. And if you want to expand on that, on the filter, you can click on this funnel icon. You can add, let's say, selectability to the filter. I don't know why that's not on by default. They should just add that on in Blender. So if I turn off selectability on the cube, I can still select it. I mean, see it, but if I go to my select tool, no matter what I do, I cannot select it. So only camera and light can be selected. So it's kind of like a filtering area also. This is called your collection or outline, okay? Your outliner. So it in a way, the details list all the objects also. Good way to select objects that are too convoluted here in 3D space that you can't possibly select and click it, and then you can just do it right here. So again, I'm gonna create a line. It's probably not the best looking line right here, so but I'm just gonna point it like so. All right, and we call that the outliner / collection. Okay, and that's the one right there. Okay, all right, now this one right here should have made my sidebar a little bit higher over there. So this entire section right here, and again, this kind of changes in look depending on the tabs that you pick. Okay, so this is your property panel. So we're just going to call it properties because there's multiple of them. And it's on a vertical tab. It used to be a horizontal tab back in the old days of Blender, but now you can go where your render is, your output, what's your size, format, your modifiers depending on context also. Okay, your camera, so on and so forth. Your world colors, your textures, your materials, they'll be right here. So this is the properties right here. So I'm gonna add more arrows right here so that it's quite obvious where we're at on that one. Okay, finally, two other sections right here would be right here at the very top left corner. File, edit, render, window, and help. Those will be your top menu. Okay, so again, just remember where I put the mouse cursor. So top menu. Okay, so this is where you typically file, save as, external data when you want to automatically pack all the textures you're using. You can also append here where you can bring in a model from a different file. Where you export, you import, you open and save blend files. Okay, undo, redo, preferences, which is very important to know where it is. That's where you change the settings in Blender, and your typical it's where you render. Okay, your window to show or not show all sorts of windows in Blender, and then for your help. So this is your top menu. Okay, and after the top menu are these tabs right here. So remember I said Blender is kind of like a super program where you get to do all these things, and this is how it manages those spaces. Okay, workspaces. So this is layout, modeling, sculpting. Let's wait for it because it'll load into memory. UV editing for your unwrapping and texturing, your texture painting, shadings when you work with materials. Okay, animation, strictly render window if you render and you want a dedicated window and you don't want the floating one. Compositing when you do your post-processing like After Effects. Geometry nodes right here when you want to work with objects and multiply them, do whatever you want to do with them using nodes or kind of industry standard as opposed to layers. And we can also do scripting, programming, writing code for Blender. And we have the plus sign here for stuff that's not listed right there. So if, let's say, layout, you're working in layout and you went to modeling, there's really no difference between the two. It's just that in modeling, the timeline disappeared because it's for modeling. Okay, but that doesn't make any difference wherever you are here other than the ones that are like, let's say, shading, right? You probably don't want to be modeling here. You're wasting all this space, but you can model here. I can do everything in this window right here. So think of Workspaces as just a fancy way the Blender developers set aside for you a pre-defined space dedicated for that purpose, let's say sculpting. So they made a way where you're not animating here, so they took out the timeline. You got your sculpting brushes right here. Look at all this canvas dedicated to just sculpting, and you still got your collection and you still got your property window. Okay, so if I'm in layout right here or modeling, I can change this to look like any of those spaces, right? I can expand my window here. So let's say, let's copy animation here. As you can see here, animation, you got your rendered camera view here, and you got your working space right here. You got your timeline. So if I wanted to, I could do that. I could split this. So if I hover my mouse right here and then right click it right here, I can do a vertical split and drag that. And as you can see, I got two windows. This one is dedicated solely to the camera, so I can change that to the camera. Okay, and then finally here I can do a horizontal split. Well, probably should have done that before I added that, but you get the point. And right here I can change this to my timeline. There you go. So not exactly like the animation, but as you can see, I can change any of this to whatever on this one. So these are not fixed. You can change this to however you want. Workspaces, okay, and make them as customized, to your preference, however you want. Okay. However, this one, let's say, hey, I butchered modeling. I want it back to modeling. You could do that. You don't have to undo all these things you did here. You can simply right-click a workspace and delete it. It goes away. And when you want it back, you simply click plus right here. Under General, you will find Modeling, and you got a brand new one. Okay. You can even have multiple of these. You can duplicate that if you want. So that, let's say you want this always looking at that, and then so you don't want to mess with your camera, you just want to keep flipping back and forth. So that's what a workspace is. Okay, so by default we started layout right here, And on our future lessons, we can always change those and change them to however you want. Let's say when we're working with animation and we want to add a timeline where we can add sound, and we can add one more in here. So I can right click, horizontal split, and then I can change this to the video sequencer right here, which is our kind of video edit, and then I get a timeline in video, so I can drag audio here and match our sound, our action with animation. Okay, so that's in a nutshell what the Blender interface is. Okay, so just to kind of recap, your entire screen right here is your 3D space or viewport. You got your toolbar, keyboard shortcut T, your sidebar, keyboard shortcut N, as in numbers. Okay, your timeline at the bottom, where you can change your timeline. Okay, and timeline position, and then at the bottom is your status bar. This one is your collection, where you can hide things, you can filter things, and you can put them in groups. This is your property window. Okay, top menu, where you can undo, redo, file, save, exit, the works. And finally, your workspaces, which are predefined tabs, spaces for you to optimize your work without having to change one. Can you imagine you wanted this setup right here and you only have layout, so each time you start you have to customize that from scratch. So this is basically just a shortcut, okay, to a predefined UI look. All right, so that's Blender in a nutshell regarding its parts. Okay, with our lessons, since we have a lot of students migrating from other programs, I will keep repeating myself and what you call this and how to get them on all the lessons until you all get familiar with it. Okay, so now let's open a file where we can talk about the viewport interface. Okay, so let me open file. So I deleted a cube. So this is a model that we will use in our advanced animation. So we can do quad ped animation. We're going to add bones, the works, and then put the principles of animation with this model right here. So this is Winston. I modeled this from a toy, so not directly from the Pixar short film. So it was modeled from a toy version of that, which kind of looks like the one in the movie, in the short film, but there's some slight difference in there. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. As you can see, we're seeing this in color, right? So again, we're in viewport first. So what are the common things that students kind of panic about when they're working with Blender and all of a sudden it's not working? So very important that you see these four circles here, or spheres. These are your different types of shading in Blender. Okay, sometimes your resolution is kind of high and it's low, and your icons are bigger, which I will do now. So don't follow this. This is just me kind of changing my interface here. So I'm going to go 1.5 on the scale so that my icons, you can see once I press enter, they get big. All right, so they're easier for you to kind of see. Okay, but the problem with this is you're losing real estate because all your icons are bigger. It's just that it's better for the viewer to kind of see what the buttons are. Okay, so I'll usually be doing 1.5 resolution now at the beginning lessons in Blender, but once you get familiar, you don't need them this big. You'll know what you're looking at. Sometimes, however, these things are hidden because, let's say, your collection is like that. Okay, as you can see, I'm exaggerating here, right? I'm just dragging this all the way here until those are gone. Okay, or you have a workspace where those are pretty much pushed because you have so many items here at the bottom. At the top of your viewport. Okay, so let me go like so to force that. So this is a common issue with students because those things are missing. Okay, so what you need to do when that happens is that you need a 3-button mouse for Blender. Okay, you don't want trackpad. It's just life is easier when you have a 3-button mouse. So you can go here and then scroll your mouse, and then you can reveal those. Okay, so any information that's missing because your computer or your monitor does not support high resolution, you can scroll. So sometimes your resolution is lower than what I have set up here, and some of your tabs here in the properties panel are way down here. So all you have to do is scroll your mouse here and they'll do that. Okay, kind of like what I'm doing here. Okay, so any portion that you usually see in the video and it's missing, simply scroll. Okay, so that's how we figured that out. So viewport shading, very important. We have 4 of them. The first one is wireframe. So that is oh, it looks like high resolution, but it's not. I'm using some modifiers here. So okay, it's still technically a low poly, but anyway, wireframe, that's exactly what it says. It's you can see it in wires. Okay, so there's this icon right here, which is the X-ray or see-through icon. When this is off, as you can see, we only see the top surface wire of the object. Okay, when I turn this on, it's a see-through. All right, and we'll talk about why that's important later on when we're selecting sub-objects or edit mode items. Okay, but for now I'm going to turn it off. Just want to show you that it's there. The next one is solid mode. So when you click solid, pretty much shows it in solid, no color. Okay, you can still turn this on and it becomes transparent. Okay, so X-ray. So you don't see your wireframe, but you see it in solid. The third one right here is your material preview, or just think of this as preview mode. Okay, your preview mode disregards any lighting that you have in the scene. So this is not lighting this object right here. As you can see, obviously that one is on the left side, and then we're fully lit right here. So when you're in preview mode, you are working. Okay, you want Blender to fully lit your scene regardless where you rotate your camera or your object. Okay, and you can see properly because the light is evenly distributed, and you can pretty much see everything, including inside of the mouth. Okay, all right, so this is material preview or preview mode. So don't work on this and then you go like, hey Dane, I'm going to submit my project, it's well lit and all that. No, it's not. We don't know what the lighting is, and not unless you know and you set it up. This is just for previews. Now the final one right here is the rendered look. This is what you see is what you get pretty much. Okay, we're in EV by default. That's our engine. It's kind of like a game engine, which is a real-time renderer. And when you're on this one, whenever you set up your lights and before you submit anything, you make sure you're on the final preview right here. I mean the final selection, which is the rendered view. This shows you what's going to be rendered. So if the camera's aimed right here, right? So let's say I select, I want to see what the camera's seeing. Okay, there are several ways to do that. The easiest way is if you have a numpad, you just press 0 on your numpad and it just jumps to that. Okay, or tilde on your keyboard. Okay, it's the key below escape, and you can easily see all the possible camera angles that's available for us, and I can change to that. So I can go view camera here, and it's changed to that. Okay, we're just showing you this so that when I click render here and click render, and that's exactly what's being shown. Okay, all right. You might look, Winston's kind of freaky and missing legs because I have the other half turned off on render because this is not a final model yet. Okay, so there it is. What you see is what you get on the fourth selection sphere, sorry. Okay, so let's go back to our previous camera. So you have to do is just rotate the camera right here like so, and which will show you how. But wireframe, solid, preview, final. Okay, and this is the of course this one is pretty much disabled on final because What you see is what you get, right? And then here you can still turn on your transparency or X-ray mode. Okay. All right. So let's go to preview here because we can see we can demo better. All right. So that's usually the first issue when it comes to Blender. Okay. Next one is how do we navigate here? So part of the syllabus mentioned that you need a 3-button mouse because it's part of your navigation. Okay. So if we're just simply using our interface, you can navigate using a 1-button mouse if you want to. Okay. But it's not very efficient. All right. So let's take a look at these icons here. Zoom, and looks like a magnifying lens, right? Hand tool or the pan tool. Toggle camera and back to work camera. And then finally here you can switch from flat, see how flat that is, okay, to perspective. Flat, perspective. Okay, and I will also go through all the keyboard shortcuts here. All right, so the obvious one is zoom. So this is how you use it. So when you want to click zoom here, you can't just click that and then go somewhere. It disengages. So when you're zooming using this icon, you need to stay where the icon is, click and drag your mouse up and down, and you can zoom. When you go to the hand tool, stay here. Don't click this and drag somewhere. Stay here, click, and then pan. Okay, and then this one toggles your camera like what we did before, render camera, and go back to that. And this is your orthographic. Okay, so useful tool, especially if you're using a tablet computer and you're using a pen to do all your navigation, and you're strictly relying on Blender interface and you don't even have a keyboard. Okay, all right, so how do we use the mouse button here? So I'm clicking the middle mouse button. Okay, I'm not scrolling it. Okay, and with that I can orbit my camera. What I'm doing here is I'm orbiting the camera. I'm physically going around Winston the dog here, and I'm not rotating Winston. As you can see, the grid on the floor, that's why I didn't turn this off, is locking on Winston. So when you're doing this, you are holding a camera and you're going around your subject. Okay, if I scroll, I'm scrolling my mouse, I'm zooming in and out. So we kind of mimic that feature of the zoom right there when you have a mouse scroll. Okay, so if I want to use the pan or move the view, I have to hold down a keyboard key, shift, and then middle click drag. So shift and middle click drag, I'm able to pan my view. That's the same thing as this one. If I scroll the mouse, it's the same thing as click and dragging this. If I want to orbit the camera, I middle click drag. Okay, so shift and middle click is to pan. If you hold down control and middle click, it's the same as zooming in. Okay, it's much smoother though, because when you're scrolling with the mouse, you have increment jump on the zoom. You see it? It's like snappy. It snaps. When you hold down control and hold down middle click and drag it up and down, it's a smooth zoom, very similar to this. All right, recap. Shift, middle click, pan, scroll the mouse to zoom, hold down the middle mouse button and drag it around to orbit. All right, so that's our kind of navigation here. Okay, so how do we move objects in Blender? And this is generic, a lesson to any 3D program. It's the same. The only difference here is that the coordinate system in Blender, it's a little bit different. Okay, so the Z-axis typically on other programs it goes in and out, and Y-axis goes up and down. In Blender, as you can see, our red line is your X, Y line is the Y-axis, and let me turn the Z on, and Z goes up and down. Okay, so The reason for that is Blender's treating the floor like a table, like this. Okay, so your in and out is green, but someone decided to move the table like this and call it a computer monitor. So what happens to that? Well, here you can see it. Z became in and out, Y is up and down, and X is left and right. Okay, but in Blender they never made the table move like a monitor or position like a monitor. It's still on the ground, like your drafting table and whatnot. Okay, so that's the only difference. You'll get used to it. You'll freak out at first. How come Z is up and down? It's what it is. Okay, all right, so how do we move here? We have move tools in Blender in our toolbar. Transform tools in our toolbar that are the common ones, right? So first one is your move tool, your rotate tool, and then your scale tool. Move, self-explanatory. It will move your object. It will rotate your object. This one right here. It will scale or resize your object. Okay, so in order to do this one, we need to make sure that we have an object selected. If I go to my move tool, so you can see here, I can move this freely if I position my mouse anywhere in that white circle. Okay, the eyes and the color are left, so don't freak out. All right, so if I right click here, I'm not disengaging my left mouse button. Look at the status bar. It says at the very bottom left corner, it says left button to confirm, right button to cancel. So if I right click here, it cancels it, it brings it back. If I move it like so and then let go of the left mouse button, I confirmed
Hayden.
it.
Hi.
Oops, a little bit of a audio bonus from Gary right there. All right, so if I click here, undo, it just brings it back. Okay, so we will talk more about this transform tools on our next video. Okay, and that's just kind of to quickly show you the interface.